Want to get gel all up in my headset, so I'm gonna sit it right here. Just turn up the volume. See if I could hear it. Ah, there you go. Okay. I wasn't really gonna say much. I could just have it play down just a little bit. But I was listening to it like this Russian official, and he said something very alarming. And it's something we have like I thought when I raised up as I got educated or whatever, and me not really always saying that I was equal to someone that was educated. And I was like, well, I know how smart I am, whatever. But then I realized it's access to resources and time that you want to put into it. And knowing the Broncos scene, there's a lot of people like hacks and everything. And I know I came off as that. I know I can come off as that. And I know I definitely went even more of that into when I was growing up, using a lot of demagoguery. But it's so prevalent now. But I think in part because we know how effective it is. But I always thought we would like grow out of it because it's very immature, right? But when I heard a Russian official say something about Bajorn, that he is allowing his actions is allowing Bakhmut to be encircled, it's just so detrimental to like the Russian populace that they don't even care about. I mean, it's not one thing to like say we are systematically going to destroy the lower class so the upper class of the Russians could have more wealth, whatever. And it's just so haphazard about it. It's like our country has too much mouth feed, so we only want this certain class to actually have that access to those resources or whatever, right? So it's not organized. This whole war is even to another level not organized. Not only is it not organized, whatever, it's at all levels it's fucked up. And then if you extend that rationale, that is also going to be China. Granted, one would think like they would learn how to fight. And one would have to assume naturally you would do that by trial and error because you would have no choice. And we're sort of forced to acknowledge that China, by an extent, when there was a confrontation with them, they would learn the lessons, whatever, and probably. But my thinking is only certain people would actually know these tactics, whatever, right? Because you are rarely told why you're fighting because they just want to trigger a response so you have an action that will lead to your death and they're just trying to get rid of you. So why would you teach the Chinese population tactics or whatever and be open about why you want to fight? And on the inverse of that or whatever, and even that connotation on our side, we get to be truthful, we get to be transparent. Um, every Ukrainian should know basic tactics, should know more involved tactics, especially now. It's a lot more fun because I remember reading tactical books when I grew up. And it's really kind of embarrassing now. Like you think you see everything play out in your head because when you're reading, because your mind is this vivid and paints this really good picture of everything. But then when you go back and cross-reference it or whatever, it's like, oh, that's not exactly how it was. And then when you have other people who do really thorough research, it's like, oh, that's even more exciting. It's like, imagine you made a decision and based on a book or two that you read or whatever, not even give you a full picture, whatever. And it's only based on your experiences up to that point, what you put into that's what your mind puts in and fills in those blanks. And that's kind of dangerous. So there's no really way for you to acquire all that information and just be like, okay, I know that. Say just read it and you're good. So you gotta like it's a cumulative of everything, your experiences, what you read, everything. You know what I'm saying? And how many does China have? Zero. But as this war is increasing, Russia is having more and more. But we killed most of the generals of that Russian army. On the other side, on our side, by and large, we didn't. I'm talking about the Ukrainians and obviously Americans. And now, granted, we are not hubris as Americans, our arrogance is like we all have that experience and everything like that because we have these wars, but not to the extent that the Ukrainians have. Ukrainians have this inner need to know tactics or whatever, and they've seen heavy, heavy fighting and how it apply what they have studied and what they are going to study because they have the need to study tactics or whatever, and what they have for the higher extent to the vast majority of Americans. I'm talking about, and probably a handful of Americans that are in Ukraine right now. Side point, I'm going off on a tangent. But you see what I'm saying? So we got to put our biases aside that we know everything. That being said, there's a couple of cases, especially at Bakhmut, that come to mind. And this one is always one of my favorite. I'm just going to pause it because there's a road coming out of Bakhmut. And this is the one thing that I think we are failing to understand in like modern tactics. Like as we developed, let me just make sure I'm streaming. Okay. As we developed, mechanical, tanks and everything else like that, we sort of say we discarded, maneuver tactics. We're too advanced, but we move beyond that. We're just so evolved. We're just so technologically advanced. That's all behind us. And then again, that's hubris. That's nonsense. Because if you ask basically anybody, the distance between having a phalanx and a cohort, everything is in large. You could kill at a longer distance. The person next to you is at a larger distance. You know what I'm talking about? So it's on a much larger scale. And you'd be like, well, it's counterintuitive. You could move faster or whatever. So that space doesn't really matter. But it's just, as I said, it's on a larger scale. And you think, well, you put troops forward or whatever, or you put weaponry forward, and it takes so quick for those things to get up there. But that's not really the case because you need such a mass amount of those. You could have hours and days where they know it's there, but they can't react because they can't put enough armor there, which is good because now you could tell. Now we're in a very unique part of the world's history. You can tell the people fighting, but like these are the tactics. They have time to absorb exactly what we're doing. You don't have seconds to be like, look, you all gotta push forward and attack on this, left side or whatever. They just know basic things like that. But this is also what's happening over here. This is what's happening over here. You could coordinate a lot better. So that information, when you're more open about it, you're able to fight better because you know the bigger picture. And then when you're fighting the Russians and Chinese, they won't know the big picture because they're fighting for autocracy, a dictatorship where they don't want you to know why. Oh, well, you're fighting for the Chinese nation and whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, you're fighting for one person. You're fighting for one person's wealth, his ideology, whatever. Because it's when you get into those things, it's not about like, okay, well, it's about Russians or it's about a certain population demographic or whatever. Oh, you got to be this certain type of Russian. Oh, you got to be this other type of Russian. And then when you finally look at it, it's only for one person. It always gets narrowed down, and it's just like few. And if you really look at it, it's the Muscovites. The people in and around Moscow. You know, and if you really had to capture one city in Russia, it would be that one. But that's it. That's a side point. Okay, so I'm just saying my thoughts or whatever. But because you just see how things play out. The Russians detected, the Ukrainian columns coming in. I'm like, all right. And I was like, why does this not matter? And I was like, well, I kind of thought about that, but is that really the truth? I mean, it's kind of deadly if I state that, but then I was going back and forth. Then I just finally realized these Russian people stating this, they just don't give a fuck. They're just stating that, it's just like they're just trying to say, I know about this and to convince people to do that. And I was just like, it's just crazy. And people's lives are online. I was like, well, if I state something, am I being arrogant in myself saying that I know to a higher extent than other people? But so am I doing the same thing? Talking about, so you had this self reflection, but then finally you realize it's a prevalence of everybody knowing what's going on, you know, and that's the important thing. People are trying to attach to these factoids and these things where it gains the most something of value for them. Here's death. There is nothing more triggering that gains more attention than death, destruction, suffering, or whatever. So what can I gain from that? More political power, more money, um, whatever it is, land, sex, and everything else, that career opportunities and stuff like that, pushing out, something, some attention. It gains attention. I want part of that attention. So you try to associate with that, and when you do that, you're hacking. You're basically you're just full of shit. You know what I'm talking about? And so, how do you remove that? How do you give how do you lessen the suffering, lessen the death? Well, you put out more information, what I'm talking, for the side that is trying to prevent that death. I'm talking about? And that's what I'm trying to. And so I was like, okay, let me at least state that, I'm talking about, so Ukrainians know exactly the bigger picture. And it's based on historical, things that happened, in our past, and we shouldn't repeat it. Or do things that we know that work, whatever, right? More or less. I could have said that better. Trust me. Anyways, but more information where we know why we're fighting, and that's a more positive thing. You know what I'm saying? And then I even I guess what I'm always attentive to is, like, should I state something that, if the other side knows, is it dangerous to our side? I'm talking about. So I'm always very self aware of that. I'm talking about, and so I'm very hesitant. And then I just realized this other side is just so disorganized or whatever, that it has minimal impact or whatever. And so the more information that we have, it is disproportional to them. You know what I'm talking about? And to identify that these people have don't really care about tactics, whatever. I think it's even more important. And I don't really think they could resolve that in the near future. I mean, they can, but it's they just can't, because the fact of the matter, it leads to this. Because I was thinking before, it leads to this rational chain of events. If they tell people why they're fighting, they're not gonna want to fight in Ukraine. It's just that they're gonna take that weaponry back to their own parts of Russia, and they're gonna rebel against Russia. And then I was thinking, well, if that's the case, the thing would potentially happen with China. Tibet would what do you call it, succeed from China, which is happened after the UN said you cannot gain land by conquest, but somehow we allow China to say it's part of Tibet is part of China, when it has no legal foundation for it. But it's just they have this de facto notion they could gain land by conquest. Anyways, so once they start that on a larger macro level, it would sow so much disunity in Russia after a while. Be like, why are we even here? I'm talking about? So, and this is more of a late stage type of thing, where Zelensky could start making, individual peace negotiations to different army groups. Like, look, we can annihilate you, or you could leave our territory, and we'll allow you to have your weapons so you could defend yourself against the upcoming Russian, attack, whatever. But you'll be able to defend yourself because we're annihilating what's left of Russian military right here. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like what Lushenko is doing up there. He knows he only has about 10,000 troops, 60,000 really, whatever, right? If those get annihilated, what does he have to instill power? Nothing. You know what I'm talking about? And so you have 20,000 up there. Yes, it's a holding force to make Ukraine look up at um, a Belarus or whatever, right? But what else can they possibly do? Worst case scenario, they could help enforce Lukashenko's military rule and maybe conscripts. You know what I'm talking about? Help him force the militarization of Belarus or whatever, right? That's my thinking. Because 20,000 isn't much to do anything else. It's like a policing force, you know? But I mean, you would have time to adjust to it if you see conscripts of Belarusians, whatever, and them cutting in roads towards Ukraine is alarming. But I would definitely have highly aggressive surveillance, knowing what roads that, as they come in, you start mining them. As they, right before the initial attack, and you blunt a lot of it, and you have your successive lines of fortifications up there, and you just keep building, nonstop building. More excavators go up there and everything else like that. It's constantly building. So you know what? So less troops could do more, and you just sort of delay them, and then you could have a force meet up there. Um, have a mobile force move up, go up there. And but anyways, it's just you do have, and that's why you're building fortifications. So you have that time where you have that. You know what I'm saying? But I really don't see what that 20,000 in Russia is really going to do. I mean, no one's going to be fooled by it. But see, this is the whole thing. What's happening? They're trying to provoke us where they're justified to other world communities into this confrontation, and we can't be lured into that. Do because we're forced to take an aggressive stance, short of provoking people, because appeasement doesn't work. So how do we take this? I wouldn't, I wouldn't really say assertive, but I want to say aggressive, even a very proactive meaning and connotation as it is. But we have to take this very aggressive stance without, escalation or whatever, right? So, and it's not just one thing one person can do. We all have to put our heads together and mind, well, this is the best thing to do over here. It's the best thing. Oh, wait. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's do this over here. And it's just a very dynamic thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's one person says, oh, I know everything. And this, nah, man, this constantly needs to be put in a think tank or whatever and be like, okay, we got to do this. Okay, over this situation, we got to do that. You know what I'm talking about? Because, or else they're going to be able to maneuver what they want to do. And that's sort of what the other side wants to. They want to use this war of death and destruction and force what their own agenda. You know what I'm saying? And it's never the case. You cannot predict war. You cannot predict death. These things could blow up in your face. You know what I'm talking about? It's just like you go in, then all of a sudden your country's destroyed. You know what I'm saying? It happens time and time again. If you look at the Diadochi, I mean, yeah, the Greeks, I was in the great successor states or whatever. They kept fighting over and thinking like, okay, we gained control of the world basically, and we could do whatever the fuck we want. And what they ended up doing is they basically eroded the Hellenistic influence they did have. You can't do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? It's just not how it works. You're not you can't be like, we know the most about battle. We know the most about tactics. And we could outsmart everybody else around us or whatever. And we're going to have our chiefs gained whatever. It's just, this is a very bloody thing. You end suffering. You don't encourage it. You try to end it as fast as possible. But people are like saying, well, okay, well, now we can't have war, whatever. Let's just let them attack, knowing they're going to attack another country, knowing that or whatever, and just trying to move and switch around, saying hiding behind that we want peace when they actually want war or whatever. And this is just so insulting to the human condition that it's so dangerous. You know what I'm talking about? That's another side issue. But let me get into a few things here. It's very straightforward. And one thing that I always want to come, I'm always concerned about is what do we have? Always have something in reserve because they're going to keep escalating what they have, increasing their capabilities, and if we throw out all our capabilities out at once or whatever, they're going to learn to adjust it. And we don't want that. So we always have to hold back, and it sucks. People die for it or whatever. But if they could handle our most capable things with less or whatever, then that learning and curve will not have as greater effect when we do have it. You know what I'm saying? At the very end of this battle. So in the battle there, Belisarius, if there's one person that everybody should learn and they gotta fight to defend their own land, it should be Belisarius. Caesar, Belisarius, Hannibal, um, well, Alexander the Great too, but he's just one of those generals. Anybody accomplished Roman general, because if you really look at the Roman legionaries, all of them were taught tactics. Everybody's like, oh well, look at this general, look at that general, whatever. But they were all like that. They are all capable, and it's these people who, not through martial ability, and new tactics, whatever, they didn't know who was going to survive, so they all got cross trained. They all do this, right? And it's just their system that they had to know it. And so we always look, oh, these are such great people, whatever. But there was many capable people that everybody knew that. I'm talking about that's how they were very effective. And they could fight as one. Anyways, so what happened was, this is day two of the battle. Mousa was attacked on the right side, and so what he did, he since the right side was attacked, the left side was attacked the next day or whatever, because he depleted it or whatever. These trenches ate up most of the force. I'm pretty sure these trenches weren't like Pacific trenches that we think now or what they are. Maybe just like a ditch or whatever, or they're to catch cavalry. So my thinking, since the writings are a little bit off on it, and you would think like there would be people in the ditches like trenches now, whatever, but that wasn't the case because you get stabbed down because the height was advantage. But they'd be down, and then the dirt would be thrown up on one side of it. So it'd be different historical, um, in historical, the geographic configuration of a trench would be a lot different because it would serve as a different person because you are attacking, a person with, a sharp object, right? And having an elevated portion and then someone below you, you even increase that difference, whatever. So be someone up here stabbing downwards. So it even slows down that cavalry even more. Right here. So even so, this other side right over here was very depleted. They took up the on the brunt of the force. So these few troops took the fight out of it, and all their spears, all the dulled down their weapons. They became less sharp or whatever. Their shields were chipped. They're tired. Everything. So as a fighting force is really diminished or whatever. And that was the whole point of it. So they kept rotating people to the front, rotating people to the front or whatever, right? So now they have a fresh new force coming in. And that's the whole point of having something in the rear, whatever, a whole fresh new force. We always have to have that element. So we give out everything. We won't have that fresh new force or whatever. That adds something more dynamic to the battlefield where they have to adjust to. And and we could kill more people more effectively, whatever, and stop this whole progression, whatever. But it's something that has a lot of discipline, and people don't understand it. But this is what's happening in Bakhmut. Take out equipment, kill more people, hold more territory, whatever. When we have when we introduce something new that the enemy does not know about. It's same thing with the javelin missiles. So now that's going to be backward engineered. So now we're forced to develop a new one, but so we oversaturate our not oversaturate, but we should license it out to every country in NATO. So they build that more, so they're going to have it. So we want to have 10 times amount as they do. And yes, we could develop it a little bit more, like have version one, two, three, javelin, quote unquote, that kind of thing. But the fully next generation, we keep to ourselves. So the full on generation two, three, we don't release out to Ukraine or anybody else. We just keep it within NATO. But the generation one javelin that's already being backward engineered, we can improve upon it a little bit or whatever, and that kind of thing, make some tweaks to it. By and large, we want to keep the next generation. Um, we want to keep it entirely to ourselves, obviously, but making some adjustments. I don't want to keep it too stab because there's always some improvements. Well, how people are. Well, we got to do by the book, whatever, and nothing can be changed. And it's just we live in a bureaucracy, this crazy shit. And like I said, and people hold to those little factoids because that's what we have as a nation. I get it, I'm talking about, but you can do a little bit of adjustments, whatever. But the next, second, and third, we'll keep to ourselves. But it's more important that we have hell of a lot more javelins than what's going to be reproduced by and backward engineered by our adversaries. It's just how it is. So that's just one of those little things that I need to be problem solved because those things are just so expensive, whatever. And how are they going to build it cost effectively? And if they find how to build cheaply with less, they were kind of fucked. If we don't have more than they do. But then we said, well, we're holding back on it. Well, yes, if it wasn't backward engineered, but we should already be developing our generation two and three, put those put generation one into production, have our stockpile up, get two out, and then we just sort of switch out our two on our stockpiles and send out the generation ones out, saying that kind of thing. Am I thinking? But this is one aspect of things. There's a whole larger picture here. Because even getting to the social political aspect of this, that they want to eliminate certain demographics, right? And here at home, we want to do the same. And then me being native, anything that's external, people attach onto that for me. I'm talking about it's like if it's Hindu, Arab, Chinese, or whatever, and it's infuriating. I'm talking about it's just like it's almost disregard. It's completely disregarding the native aspect and the attachment to our land of the United States, whatever, and it's an adherence to a color of skin. Because and they're giving away when you do that, you're giving away your adherence to your the color of skin or whatever, and that's detrimental to the United States. And it's just you have to deal with these people when you think you outgrow it, but that it's just so prevalent in American society, whatever, and anti-government, anti-demographic. I mean, anti-civilization. But not an argument, that I need to get into or whatever. So, people try to bait you into that something external, whatever. But but then they use that response to actually further their fantasy, whatever, and draw you outside of a native argument, Native American argument. And I just realized, you don't, there's this no response that could win that because their response is they're already ingrained in a thought that this is what they want you to be viewed as different. So if you win that argument, they'll find something else because they don't want to have a native population viewed as being more um, American than they are. And so it's just, it's a zero sum game. You know what I'm talking about? So, but when a white person reaches out to these other demographics, by and large, the people we do allow in are lighter skins of those other races, whatever, by the way. That's a good Samaritan, you know what I'm talking about? But when us, it's something nefarious. It's just like it's crazy, you know what I'm talking about? But when we reach out to other different white cultures, oh, that's cool, whatever, you know what I'm talking about? But anything they get attached, them being more American than a Native American, boom, they just latch onto it. And it's just nonsense, whatever. But that's why I could just see somebody say something about the javelins. Oh, the Iranians got this or whatever. Like, man, you're just giving away your Nazism. You know what I'm talking about? It's just like you gotta be if you want to hide your Nazism, yeah, be a lot better. I grew up in a German household. They did it in layers and layers. They weren't so blamed. You know what I'm talking about? You could see what happened last with Donald Trump. If anything, you know what I'm talking about, you should push for um using your hustle to bring people together. You know what I'm talking about? I don't understand why you would do the opposite. It's easy to separate people. It is very hard to bring people together. If you want to prove how smart you are, bring people together where you build stuff, where you create things, you innovate, you bring up people's standard of living, not destroy the quality of life for people and increase suffering. That's not power. I don't know. That's just, I thought everybody knew that at a certain level, but when you get older, you realize people never learn that. But, anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here. So if you really want to look at three battles in particular, it'd be the Battle of Cannae, Battle of Doria, and the Battle of the Long Bridges. And this is the Battle of Long Bridges right here. Um, Very interesting thing because these people were. It was right after Battle of Teutoburg Forest. I mean, we're not right after. It was a couple years after the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, and Germanicus came in about 2 or 3 years after, right? Because okay, we got beat at the Battle of Teutoburg, and we got to take out Varius, right? And Varys had Germanicus on the run, and they realized they had to get back to Roman-controlled territory, right? And what Germanicus did is very was able to beat Varys at the end or whatever, but just in the very initial phases, as he was coming back from the initial foray into it, because he sort of made like a sweep into German territory, and they came back out, and they all gathered him. They knew where they could get him again, right? So there's going to be a repeat of Teutoburg, and it almost happened. And so now they're traveling across this marsh or whatever, and they're rapidly. are holding off a couple hordes or holding off the Germans or whatever, and they're laying down planks of wood or whatever so they can get the wagons across and everything they need, get their people across or whatever, and they're fighting and building at the same time, and it's this classic, Caesarian type of warfare or whatever, and Julius Caesar, the coming empire had to beat out you know, um, the republics, the people that are trying to defend the Roman Republic, so. And what he constantly did was constantly just build and his fortifications and just nonstop fought and built at the same time. And you sort of see the same thing like in Bakhmut. It's like, okay, we got to shift the road over here. It's on bombardment, but you got to get to it, and get these vehicles in and out, right? These things that protect these bullets. So it's like this happened in the past. And what held them together was knowing that you can't do one or the other. You got to build and fight at the same time. You hold them up long enough so other people can do what they need to do, and they're doing it, then you fight and they do it. It's just constantly moving and shifting. It's very dynamic, you know not just you mindlessly going after and trying to kill people and shit like that. But it's just like these new weapons of war that we need to come up with. Do we have to have tanks? Yes. Do we have to have infantry fighting vehicles, armored cars, right? And something even like a weapons platform that has a 20 millimeter cannon or an anti tank missile. And now I'm thinking this third weapon should probably be like a small artillery, like maybe like a 60 millimeter mortar, or 81 millimeter mortar, 120 millimeter mortar. And it could also be even like a tank rifle, like a short, like a tank gun or whatever, right? If it needs to, so it could have high angle of fire or line of sight. And then you can have even modern day, different type of rounds, right? Um, let's say white phosphorus, or you have some kind of bunker busting, high explosive, whatever. But you would have these on mass, right? In the millions of these, 20 millimeter cannons or the anti tank missile, whatever. Because it'd be very small and compact, like probably two of my arms width out. I'm talking about very, very small, almost autonomous. Carry one or two people, can protect from 50 cal, whatever. And this or we could even have like fletchlets. Even like a 20 millimeter can or a 30 millimeter can, if you put enough fletchlets in, right? It's almost like you have a shot group like this. And each one would have like a 30-06 penetrating power. Every shot going out. So you could deal with masses of people. It's all how you want to do it. Just um, how much charge you want to have in that particular round, or even in that mortar tube, if it's a line of fight fire and whatever. All depends. But anyways, the thing about it is like everything we come up with is eventually stolen where we produce it, because we're so arrogant. Like a hair strip in the back. We're so arrogant, like no one's gonna steal what we got. You guys gotta take it into account. What we have is gonna be stolen. And we just gotta out produce them and always improve upon it. And we can't have what we produce being made in another country. If we come up with it, we got to build it. But it's so cheap to be like, okay, well, we're we'll have these other people that can build it for like one third of the cost or whatever. But in the end, we're giving everything away. Remember, like Asus was like nothing. Samsung and Sony, they all it was all technology that we came up with, but we allowed them to build it. And it was literally imitations of what we had. And now they become the innovators of stuff, you know? And then that moved down to China. And now they outright just don't even go fuck. They just copy it. You know what I'm saying? We don't even give them that guise and that perception. You know what I'm talking about? It's just outright just they make it and the next street over they reproduce the same goddamn thing. So we have Amazon who knows all the shits that's coming in and out of China, the top three, top 10, everything, you know? We have all the numbers we need to have. So every product that's part of our daily living, let's go to Amazon, be like, look, we need this product over here, this company over here, all to be made over here. So it's no change to our standard of living in the Western world, you know, in the democratized world. So we can't really. So Amazon needs to help us. It being the only uh, monopoly have left, we have to use it at advantage or whatever, and have it pull out all help it pull out all the industry we can back to democracy, and then after that, we have to dismantle it like we did to Rockefeller and be like, look, well, Rockefeller, he elongated the dismantling of his empire to know how to do it correctly and even made more money after it, and we should get for the same thing to Amazon or whatever. But it's better for us that. But honestly, the only things these major companies is the only thing we have that are strong enough to go against state-run companies, you know, because they're in effect are monopolies. But we could only get these companies because of our innovation and we allow our creativity. You know what I'm talking about? So it's just like we allow it and we gotta destroy it, but if we don't allow it, you know, we're sort of hurting, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak, you know what I'm talking about? So we gotta balance it, we gotta balance this chaos. But just saying, so we gotta do that almost immediately. Because if they start giving deadly weapons to Ukraine, I mean to in Ukraine, to Russia, it really shows, the mentality, and not one specific thing, but and really it just shows it's a very profound thing. If any one action did, that would be it. But I really want to focus on one action, you know what I'm saying? And that in itself is like, oh, we're gonna all decide this one thing, but this shows you where what they intend to do. And if anything, information will start getting slowly cut off from China. And we have a lot of Chinese speakers, ever more so. And we, have a lot of technology. We could identify what kind of factories are in China, and we could map out all China, every single building. We got to know what's being built in every single building, at what capacity, all the information. Now it's almost like this economic intelligence that we need to acquire. What is their capability? What It's a huge country with a lot of people. Taking out what section and what buildings is very important. You know what I'm talking about? You can't take out every building. You can't like just drop a bomb. You gotta be like, okay, that building, okay, that building, and making sure every shot counts. You know what I'm talking about? You gotta know. You know what I'm talking about? You gotta know now before it completely gets shut down. You know what I'm saying? As you're building. So you got 1 month this, 2 weeks later you got that. So okay, every building is attended to. You put it all on a database. Every single building in China and in Russia. So nothing escapes us. You know what I'm talking about? So If something happens, like we got you. You know what I'm talking about? You want to fuck with us? You know what I'm saying? We're ready. You know what I'm talking about? We already started building our shit over here. You know what I'm saying? That's what you gotta do, man. That's it. That's not. You know what I'm saying? That is not. You're not destroying shit. You're knowing shit. You know, knowledge is power, right? But anyways, I'm gonna sum it up all in one on just a few things. So here we have Ukraine. It takes in different accounts, whatever, right? So if Ukraine is able to, for a little bit of lighter blue, all right? There we go. That's a good blue, right? You have a sever the battle space like this, and somewhere along here, doesn't matter. Sort of does, sort of doesn't. We'll just say right in the middle, right? Just for argument's sake, right? So that cuts off Ukraine into three pieces, different, where each side cannot support the other, right? This is less populated, so if this gets cut off, you could handle this, you could handle this, you could handle this dynamically and move and shift forces where it's best to your advantage, whatever, right? Because you want to get in behind the lines. Um, just like these Fire Force teams in Rhodesia, whatever, which is an extension of Air Cavalry, but it's fire maneuver. You have to use helicopters. You know, it's just the point that they're moving quicker, and they bypass fortification, they bypass urban centers, anything that could slow them down. And so, if you want to um, delineate, you know, Ukraine or whatever, right? You would want to, you need to move quickly and not be stopped or whatever. So if you take and kill everything or whatever, you're not going to get that objective, right? So you have a town, you want to control the countryside, you want to push down to the fucking sea, and then you want to circle that town. There's probably three or four towns, five towns in a certain area. Rest of it, you know, is basically open country or whatever. You circumvent it one way, and then you have another one just in case, right? And you quickly move south, you know, south, whatever avenue you have, and you select the towns that you know as few that you could basically besiege whatever, and you sever the country in half. Does it have to be Mariupol or Melitopol? Yeah, uh, or no? It doesn't really matter. All you do is have to sever it. You know, what I'm talking about, and you can work on it later. And it doesn't make any sense to attack the lines, whatever, because you're trying to get into flank the lines, you're trying to get in behind it or whatever, you know. Because you don't attack where they're strong, you attack where you had the most advantageous to have a firing line on them. You know, I'm talking about where they don't have as much guns on you, and you want to get in that position. Is it either high ground, or is it where all the guns are not facing, whatever, where you could outnumber them? You know, we had that movement, whatever, we could put more guns facing them at that duration, whatever, before they can react. And that's what you're trying to do. So you're constantly moving and shifting, whatever, right? So you're trying to divide the battle space into, you could easily do it in three, and then you want to further divide it where you could have more movement where one cannot support the other, and you could defeat them in detail, whatever, right? That's the whole point of it. But if you just look at these things, you know, Sheridan came up with it when he went through, you know, the South and everything. The Thunder runs up to Baghdad or whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just, but these are all based on, you know, things that have been happening since the beginning of time. You know what I'm talking about? the history of warfare. Chariots went out, they unleashed their fucking arrows, and they came right the fuck back, got more out. Boom, people came in, grabbed their spears, threw the spears out, whatever, and their horses came back. I'm talking about they got in the knights, got their lances, dipped them in lances, whatever, and came back out before they could react. And that's the same goddamn thing. You know what I'm saying? It's just, but we call it something different. But now with tanks and everything else, we're like, well, we're above that. I'm talking about, no, it's the same fucking thing, man. Just on a larger scale. We know our knights, for all intent purposes, can handle this part of the battle. So let's keep these guys occupied. I'm talking about while they do their thing and they can't support the knights over here. So let's go dig our lances in over there. And now, for all intent purposes, that destroys a fighting force. Now, take those knights and have this fight, finish off that and do it over here. Same thing. So that's all. You just keep doing that. You know what I'm saying? But those knights are very maneuverable. So you could take that same force again and again and again. That same, you know, whatever, 50, 60,000 people, I'm talking about, and attacking a much larger force. I'm not saying, I'm this, it's an arbitrary number. I'm not stating that's exactly what you want to do, but let's say that, um, let's say it's 50,000. You could attack a force of 1 million if you could take that, 50,000 and constantly go after a group of, whatever, I'm saying, 10 to whatever, 15,000. It's constant, just overwhelmingly destroyed and just like a seed, I'm talking about boom, destroyed, over here, destroyed, that type of thing, whatever. If you maneuver it, you know what I'm saying? That concept. But the fact is, you probably have a group of 50,000 over here, a group of 50,000 over here, a group of 50,000 over there, constantly maneuvering, destroying, destroying, destroying. You want to, so you're just chewing them up everywhere you can. I'm talking about. So that's more of the reality. So that you want to keep doing it, but it's very dynamic. But you need to get in behind where they build the fortifications quickly. Whatever you punch through, where they're not at, gain um mobility where you can move and shift and apply more force. And if that force is better weaponry or more personnel, sometimes it's surprise. If you don't get surprise, make sure it's better weaponry, whatever, because surprise only lasts for initial parts of the phasing of the initial contact, whatever. But, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? So just always be able to achieve that, you know what I'm saying? But it's always applying more force, and that's what it comes down to. We just try to delineate, not yeah, we try to break it down where it's so like complex that not even one person can understand. That's nonsense. Don't overcomplicate it. Make sure everybody knows every moving part of it, and that's the key. I'm talking about is the openness of it. I'm talking about that everybody fighting for their life and their land is able to comprehend why they're fighting it, what is going about it, talking about that type of thing. The different moving parts of it. This tactics in general. Don't keep tactical knowledge from them. I'm talking about? I mean, it's not like, telling people, well, this is exactly how we're doing, but they could, they get it. I'm talking about, okay, so if this happens, this is a foundation. If things shift up on us, we could do that. So each individual commander is able to adapt to that situation. You don't want to be like, well, here's all the information. I need to know everything, whatever. No, it's being able to adapt to the environment. And that's what I'm trying to get across, whatever. And like I said, Um, any specific thing does not hold value within itself. It's when it's combined with other things and it's constantly used and people can discern and constantly dynamically change given the environment that's in front of them. And the environment is deadly, so they have to change quicker than the people next to them. So they have to know this information, the basic tactics, whatever, more so, so, and to more advanced tactics, whatever. So they have something they could instantly be like, okay, well, I want to shoot this up to the chain command or whatever, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because the Russians won't have that ability. And that's more important. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Because on the other side, there's a bunch of hacks, and we need to use um, at the highest level. And let's go the other way. Democracy, choose creativity, innovation, increasing standard of living in life, while they choose the other. All right, I'm out. I'm just going to leave it at that. Um, yeah, study these people, man. It's really interesting, you know what I'm saying? Especially now when you have really in-depth knowledge and you can listen to it and be like, oh, okay, that's how that played out and everything. But anyways, I'm going to go. Have a good week. Peace. Salve Ukraine.